The thunder of hooves pounded across the dusty plains as Zachary Vance raced against time, his stallion's mane whipping in the hot summer wind of 1875. His heart hammered even louder than the horse's gallop as he thought of Zara Whitfield waiting at the altar, about to be handed over to Elias Thornton, a man 3 times her age with a reputation as harsh as the Montana Territory wilderness itself. Zara stood before the mirror in her small bedroom at the Whitfield ranch, her trembling fingers adjusting the modest lace veil. At 20 years old, she had known this day would come since her father had fallen deeply into debt with Thornton last winter. The agreement had been made over whiskey and desperation, her hand in marriage to clear a debt that would have otherwise cost her family their ranch and livelihood. "You look beautiful, darling," her mother whispered from the doorway, her eyes reflecting both pride and unspoken sorrow. "The carriage is ready." Zara nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. She had always dreamed of marrying for love, like the heroines in the few novels she'd managed to read between her chores. Instead, she would become the young bride of a 63-year-old cattle baron whose previous 2 wives had died under circumstances the townsfolk still whispered about. "Is there no other way, Mother?" Zara asked, though she already knew the answer. Her mother crossed the room and embraced her. "Your father tried everything. The drought took most of our cattle last year, and without Mr. Thornton's loan we would have lost everything. He's been insistent that this marriage is the only acceptable payment." Outside, her father helped her into the carriage with gentle hands that couldn't quite hide his shame. They rode in silence toward the small church in Silverdale, the closest town to their ranch. Zara watched the familiar landscape pass by, the rolling hills, the distant mountains, the open range where she had spent countless hours riding freely. After today, she would be mistress of the grand Thornton estate, but a prisoner nonetheless. The church came into view, a simple white building with a modest steeple. Several carriages were already parked outside, belonging to the handful of invited guests, mostly Thornton's business associates, and a few neighbors who couldn't politely decline. As Zara's father helped her from the carriage, the church door burst open. Pastor Miller appeared, his face flushed with alarm. "Mr. Whitfield," he called, hurrying down the steps. "There's been a situation inside." Zara followed her father into the church, her heart racing with unexpected hope. Inside, Elias Thornton stood at the altar, his weathered face contorted with rage. Opposite him, leaning casually against a pew with a hand resting near his holstered revolver, was Yates Vance. Yates was everything Thornton wasn't: young, strong, with kind eyes despite his reputation as one of the fastest guns in the territory. At 28, he had worked as a ranch hand for the Whitfields for 3 years before striking out on his own last spring. Zara had always harbored feelings for him, though she'd never dared voice them. "What is the meaning of this?" Thornton demanded as Zara entered. "I believe I've made myself clear," Yates said, his voice steady despite the tension filling the small church. "This wedding isn't going to happen." "You have no say in this matter," Thornton spat. "I have a contract with Mr. Whitfield. The girl belongs to me." Yates straightened, his eyes flashing with controlled anger. "She belongs to no one but herself." He turned to Zara, his expression softening. "Unless she chooses otherwise." "This is outrageous," Thornton bellowed. "I'll have you arrested for interference." Zara's father stepped forward. "Mr. Thornton, please. There must be another way we can settle our debt." "The arrangement is final," Thornton insisted. "Either your daughter becomes my wife today, or I'll take your ranch tomorrow." The small congregation watched in stunned silence as Yates moved to stand beside Zara. "I have a proposition," he said, addressing both Thornton and Mr. Whitfield. I've had some luck in the silver mines near Helena. I can pay Whitfield's debt in full. Thornton scoffed. A ranch hand with silver money? I find that hard to believe. Yates reached into his vest and withdrew a bank draft. See for yourself. More than enough to cover what's owed with interest. As Thornton snatched the paper, Zara stared at Yates in disbelief. He had left the ranch a year ago with barely enough money for supplies. Now he was offering to save her family from ruin. Thornton examined the draft, his expression darkening as he realized it was legitimate. This doesn't change anything. I've set my mind on a wife, not just money. Then find one who's willing, Yates said firmly. Zara doesn't love you. The older man's eyes narrowed dangerously. Love has nothing to do with marriage in these parts, boy. It's about alliances, property, and legacy. Perhaps for men like you, Yates replied, but I believe differently. He turned to face Zara fully, taking her hands in his. Zara, I should have spoken years ago. I've loved you since I first came to work for your father. I left to make something of myself, to be worthy of asking for your hand. Tears welled in Zara's eyes as the words she had longed to hear finally reached her ears. Before she could respond, Thornton's angry voice cut through the moment. This is absurd. Whitfield, control your daughter in this upstart. Zara's father looked between the furious cattle baron and his daughter's hopeful face. For the first time in months, he stood straight, finding his courage. Mr. Thornton, if Vance can truly pay the debt, then I believe the arrangement between us is concluded. This isn't about the money anymore, Thornton roared, reaching for the pistol at his hip. In a flash, Yates had his own weapon drawn. Think carefully, Thornton. Is this really how you want things to end? The tension in the church was palpable as the two men faced off. Zara's mother clutched her husband's arm, while the pastor began quietly ushering the other guests toward the door. Thornton's hand hovered over his gun, his pride warring with his sense of self-preservation. Everyone in the territory knew of Yates Vance's reputation with a pistol. Finally, the older man's hand fell away from his weapon. This isn't over, he snarled, backing toward the door. No one humiliates Elias Thornton and walks away unscathed. Remember that, all of you. With a final glare, he stormed out of the church. In the silence that followed, Zara turned to Yates, her heart pounding. Did you mean what you said about loving me? He holstered his weapon and took her hands once more. Every word. I've been a fool to wait so long to tell you. But the silver mine. How did you? Pure luck, Yates admitted with a smile. I staked a claim based on rumors, worked it myself for months, hit a vein rich enough to change everything. I came back as soon as I could, only to hear you were being forced to marry Thornton today. Mr. Whitfield approached them cautiously. Vance, I don't know how to thank you, but Thornton isn't a man who forgives easily. He'll make trouble for all of us. Then perhaps it's time someone stood up to him, Yates replied. He's bullied this territory long enough. As they left the church, Zara felt both elated and frightened. She had escaped a loveless marriage to a cruel man, but at what cost? Thornton's parting threat lingered in the air like the distant rumble of an approaching storm. Back at the Whitfield ranch, Zara changed out of her wedding dress while her parents and Yates discussed their situation in the parlor. When she joined them, wearing a simple blue dress that had always been Yates' favorite, the conversation stopped abruptly. We were just discussing options, her father explained. Thornton won't take this lying down. He'll try to ruin us, her mother added worriedly. He has connections with nearly every business in the territory. Yates stood as Zara entered. Which is why I've suggested your family might consider relocating, at least temporarily. I've purchased land near my claim in Helena. It's good ranching country with water rights. Leave Silverdale? Zara asked, surprised. The Whitfields had been among the first settlers in the area 15 years ago. Her father nodded grimly. Thornton can make life unbearable here if he chooses. He owns the bank, has influence with the marshal, controls most of the water access. What about you? Zara asked Yates. I plan to escort your family to Helena, then return to settle matters with Thornton legally. The territory is changing. His type of frontier justice is becoming outdated. That's too dangerous, Zara protested. You can't face him alone. Yates smiled reassuringly. I won't be alone. There are others who have suffered under Thornton's grip. The new territorial governor is pushing for stricter enforcement of laws, even against men like him. They spent the evening making plans. Zara's parents would leave within days, taking their remaining cattle and possessions north to Helena. Yates would accompany them part of the way, before returning to ensure Thornton honored the debt payment and relinquished his claim against the Whitfields. As dusk settled over the ranch, Yates asked Zara to walk with him to the old oak tree overlooking the property. They had shared conversations there many times during his years working for her father. I never dared to hope you might feel the same way, Zara admitted as they watched the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. I was nothing but a hired hand, Yates replied. Your father deserved more for his daughter than a man with empty pockets and a questionable past. Zara turned to face him. I never cared about any of that. I saw your heart, how you treated everyone with respect, how hard you worked. I want to do things properly, he said, taking her hand. When this business with Thornton is settled, when your family is safe, I want to court you openly, with your father's blessing. She smiled, touching his cheek gently. I think we've moved well past proper courtship, given today's events. Their laughter carried on the evening breeze, a momentary respite from the challenges ahead. Neither noticed the distant rider watching from the ridge, before galloping back toward town with news for Elias Thornton. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Marshal Bennett rode up to the ranch house just as the Whitfields were beginning to pack their belongings. Morning, folks, he said, removing his hat as he dismounted. Afraid I've got some unfortunate business to discuss. Yates stepped forward. What kind of business, Marshal? Got a complaint from Mr. Thornton. Says you threatened him at gunpoint in the church yesterday. Says you stole his bride-to-be and presented fraudulent bank papers. Mr. Whitfield joined them, indignant. That's preposterous. The bank draft was legitimate. I'm just telling you what was reported, Bennett interrupted, looking uncomfortable. I'm also here about another matter. Seems there's been some question about the ownership of a silver claim near Helena. Thornton says he has documentation showing he purchased mining rights in that area last year. Yates' expression hardened. That's impossible. I registered my claim legally, worked it myself for months. I don't doubt you, Vance, the marshal said quietly. But Thornton's got papers with the Territorial Land Office's seal. He's demanding the silver be returned as stolen property. Zara watched the blood drain from Yates' face. Without the silver money, they couldn't pay Thornton's debt. Without that payment, her father would lose everything and Thornton would likely insist on the original arrangement. This is theft through paperwork, Yates said angrily. He's falsified documents. The marshal shrugged helplessly. You'll need to take that up with the judge when he comes through next month. In the meantime, I'm supposed to bring you in for questioning about the alleged threats. You know that's ridiculous, Bennett, Mr. Whitfield protested. Thornton's the one who reached for his weapon first. I know how things stand around here, Bennett replied quietly. But I've got my orders. Thornton's filed formal charges. Yates straightened his shoulders. I understand. I'll come peacefully. No, Zara grabbed his arm. You can't, he turned to her, his voice low. It's better this way. If I resist, it only makes things worse. To the marshal, he said, "Give me a moment to speak with Miss Whitfield privately, then I'll go with you." Bennett nodded, stepping away with Mr. Whitfield to give them space. "Listen to me," Yates said urgently once they were alone. "Thornton is trying to separate us, to isolate your family again. You need to continue with the plan, get your parents to Helena, and leave you in jail. He could have you hanged on false charges. Bennett's not a bad man, just compromised. The circuit judge is honest when he arrives. I'll get a fair hearing." He gripped her shoulders gently. "Your family should be gone by then. Somewhere Thornton can't reach you." Tears spilled down Zara's cheeks. "I won't abandon you after you risked everything for us." "You're not abandoning me," he insisted. "You're ensuring that what I did wasn't for nothing. Please, Zara." With a heavy heart, she nodded. He pressed a kiss to her forehead before walking back to where the marshal waited. As Bennett led Yates away on horseback, Zara made a silent vow that she would not let Thornton win so easily. That night, after her parents had retired, Zara slipped out to the barn. Dressed in riding pants borrowed from her younger brother who was away at school, she saddled her mare and rode toward town. The plan forming in her mind was dangerous, possibly foolish, but she couldn't stand by while Yates languished in jail on false charges. Silverdale was quiet when she arrived, tying her horse behind the general store. The jail sat at the end of the main street, a small stone building with barred windows. Light flickered inside. Marshal Bennett likely keeping watch. Before approaching the jail, Zara made her way to the telegraph office. Though closed for the night, she knew that Jimmy Wells, the operator, lived in the back room. She tapped lightly on his window until a sleepy face appeared. "Miss Whitfield." "What in tarnation?" "I need to send an urgent telegram, Jimmy. It's a matter of life and death." The young man, who had always harbored a fondness for Zara, hesitated only briefly before letting her in. "This better be important enough to risk my job." "It is," she assured him, quickly writing out a message to the territorial governor in Helena, detailing Thornton's actions and the corruption allowing him to manipulate the law. She signed it from her father, knowing the Whitfield name still carried respect outside Thornton's immediate sphere of influence. "Send this immediately, and another copy in the morning," she instructed, pressing coins into Jimmy's hand. And Jimmy not a word to anyone. Her next stop was more dangerous. The jail's back window was small, but the bars were old and set in crumbling mortar. She had noticed this during previous visits to town. If Bennett was occupied at the front desk, and if Yates could loosen the bars from inside. To her surprise, she found Yates already working on exactly that when she peeked through the window. "Zara," he whispered, shocked. "What are you doing here?" "The same as you, apparently," she replied, glancing around nervously. "How much longer?" "Few minutes. Bennett's dozing up front." "But where will I go once I'm out?" "Thornton will have men watching the trails." "I've sent a telegram to the governor. Until we get a response, you'll hide at the old Crawford place. It's been abandoned since the family moved east last year." Yates worked the bars free while Zara kept watch. When the opening was finally wide enough, he squeezed through with difficulty, dropping quietly to the ground beside her. "This is madness," he murmured, but pulled her into a quick embrace. "Wonderful madness." They crept to her horse, both mounting to distribute the weight as they rode double through back alleys and eventually out of town. The abandoned Crawford homestead lay 3 miles east, hidden in a small valley that provided natural concealment. The cabin was dusty but intact. Zara had brought supplies: food, water, and a spare pistol her father kept hidden in the barn. "I'll return tomorrow night with more provisions and any news," she promised. Yates caught her hand before she could leave. "You're the bravest woman I've ever known, Zara Whitfield." "I learned courage from watching you," she replied softly. They shared a tender kiss before she reluctantly pulled away, knowing she needed to return home before her absence was discovered. Dawn brought chaos to the Whitfield ranch. Marshal Bennett arrived with a posse of Thornton's men, demanding to know Zara's whereabouts. Her parents, genuinely bewildered by her empty bed, could provide no answers. "Your daughter helped a prisoner escape," Bennett explained grimly. "That makes her an accomplice." "This is absurd," her father protested. "My daughter isn't capable of such a thing." But the evidence was damning. Jimmy Wells, intimidated by Thornton's men at first light, had revealed Zara's late-night telegram. Her mare was missing from the barn. And most tellingly, a piece of her blue ribbon had been found caught on the jail's window bars. While the search for Zara and Yates intensified, Thornton himself arrived at the Whitfield ranch with his final ultimatum. "I'll drop all charges against your daughter and that cowboy," he told Mr. Whitfield, "if you honor our original agreement. Zara becomes my wife, and I'll consider your debt paid in full." Her parents exchanged desperate looks. "We need time to consider," her father finally said. "You have until sundown," Thornton replied coldly. "After that, I'll have them both hunted down for jail breaking and fraud. The penalties for those crimes are severe, as you know." As Thornton rode away, Zara's mother collapsed into tears. "What can we do? He'll destroy them both." Mr. Whitfield paced the parlor, his mind racing for solutions. "If we knew where they were, we could warn them, help them escape the territory." A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Both turned to find Zara standing in the doorway, having entered through the cellar doors to avoid being seen. "You shouldn't be here," her father said urgently. "They're searching everywhere." "I had to warn you," she explained quickly. "Don't tell anyone, but Yates is hiding at the old Crawford place. I've been bringing him supplies." She described her plan, including the telegram to the governor. "It's too dangerous," her mother protested. "Thornton has offered to drop the charges if I marry him," Zara finished. "I know, but I can't do that, Mother, not even to save Yates." Her father studied her determined expression. "You truly love him, don't you? With all my heart." After a moment's contemplation, Mr. Whitfield nodded. "Then we'll fight. Your mother and I will continue preparations to leave for Helena. If we move quickly, we can be gone by tomorrow morning." "What about Yates?" Zara asked. "Bring him here tonight after dark." "We'll leave together, safety in numbers." The plan was set. Zara returned to the Crawford homestead with news and fresh supplies. As dusk approached, they prepared to make their way back to the Whitfield ranch under cover of darkness. "Your father is taking an enormous risk," Yates said as they saddled the horse. "Thornton could take everything from him." "He already tried that by taking me," Zara replied. "Father has realized some things are worth more than land or money." They were halfway to the ranch when they spotted the glow on the horizon, an unnatural, orange light too bright and widespread to be lanterns. "Fire," Yates said grimly, urging the horse to greater speed. They crested the final hill to a horrifying sight. The Whitfield ranch house was engulfed in flames, with several of the outbuildings already reduced to smoldering ruins. Men on horseback, Thornton's men, circled the property, ensuring nothing could be salvaged. "Mother! Father!" Zara cried, preparing to rush forward, but Yates held her back. "Wait," he cautioned, pointing to movement near the creek. In the shadows, they could make out two figures huddled together, her parents, alive and unharmed. Keeping to the darkness, Yates and Zara made their way to them. The reunion was brief but emotional. "Thornton came back early," her father explained in a hushed voice. "Said he decided not to wait until sundown. When we refused his demands, his men started the fire. We managed to grab a few valuables and escape out the back," her mother added, clutching a small bundle wrapped in a shawl. But everything else is gone. Yates surveyed the burning buildings with cold fury. This ends tonight. I won't let him destroy anything more. What can we do? Mr. Whitfield asked desperately. He has too many men, too much power. Not for much longer, Zara said, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. I stopped at the telegraph office again on my way back to Yates. The governor has responded. He's sending federal marshals to investigate Thornton for multiple violations of territorial law. Hope flickered in her father's eyes. How soon? They should arrive tomorrow, but we need to survive until then. They made their way to a cave in the foothills where the Whitfields had sometimes sheltered during severe winter storms. It provided adequate hiding place for the night, though sleep came fitfully if at all. At first light, Yates announced his intention to ride into Silverdale. I need to make sure the federal marshals find us when they arrive. And I want to see if I can rally some of the townsfolk who have suffered under Thornton. It's too dangerous, Zara protested. His men will be watching for you. Which is why I'll go instead, her father volunteered. They're looking for young lovers on the run, not an old rancher. After considerable debate, they agreed Mr. Whitfield would be least suspicious. He departed with instructions to meet at Miller's Creek by noon if all went well. The hours of waiting were agonizing. When Mr. Whitfield failed to appear at the designated time, the remaining three feared the worst. They were preparing to move deeper into the hills when hoofbeats approached many horses, moving quickly. Hide, Yates ordered, drawing his pistol as Zara and her mother retreated further into the trees. To their immense relief, Mr. Whitfield rode at the head of the group, alongside a stern-looking man wearing a federal marshal's badge. Behind them came several deputies and a dozen townsfolk, including shopkeepers and farmers who had long chafed under Thornton's influence. It's over, Mr. Whitfield called as they approached. Thornton's been arrested. The marshal dismounted, introducing himself as Patrick Donovan. We've been building a case against Thornton for months, he explained. Your telegram was the final evidence we needed to move. What about the charges against Yates and me? Zara asked anxiously. Dismissed, Donovan replied. Marshal Bennett has provided a full statement about the coercion he faced, and we found evidence of extensive document falsification in Thornton's office, including forged mining claims. The news was almost too good to believe. As they rode back toward Silverdale, Zara learned that several of Thornton's men had been arrested as well, while others had fled the territory. The cattle baron's empire had collapsed like a house of cards once official scrutiny was applied. In town, more surprises awaited. The citizens, freed from Thornton's shadow, had begun organizing assistance for the Whitfields. Offers of temporary housing, livestock, and building materials poured in from neighbors and business people, eager to make amends for years of forced complicity. You don't have to leave for Helena now, Yates told Mr. Whitfield. Though my offer of partnership in the ranch there still stands. The older man clasped his hand warmly. I think we'll rebuild here. This has been our home too long to abandon it. As the community gathered at the church to coordinate relief efforts, Yates drew Zara aside to the small garden behind the building. I almost lost you, he said softly. First to Thornton, then to his vengeance. But you didn't, she reminded him, reaching up to touch his face. We found each other instead. Yates took her hands in his. I came back to Silverdale with two purposes: to stop your wedding and to ask you a question of my own. Zara's heart raced as he knelt before her, producing a simple gold ring. I had this made in Helena, from the first small bit of silver I found. I've carried it for months, waiting for the right moment. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. Zara Whitfield, will you marry me? not because of any arrangement or obligation, but because we choose each other freely and completely. Tears of joy spilled down her cheeks as she pulled him to his feet. Yes, Yates Vance. 1,000 times yes. Their kiss was witnessed by the setting sun, casting long shadows across the garden as one chapter of their lives closed and another began. The challenges they had faced had only strengthened their bond, proving that true love could indeed flourish even in the harsh realities of the frontier. 3 months later, they stood before Pastor Miller in the same church where their journey had begun. This time, there was no interruption, no threats, only friends and family gathering to celebrate their union. As Yates slipped the silver ring onto Zara's finger, he recited vows that spoke not just of love, but of partnership, respect, and freedom. She responded in kind, promising to stand beside him through whatever adventures lay ahead. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Pastor Miller declared to cheers from the congregation. The Whitfield ranch rose anew from the ashes, with a slightly larger house to accommodate the extended family that would soon include Yates and, eventually, children of their own. The silver mine continued to produce modest but steady returns, providing security without extravagance. On their first anniversary, as they sat beneath the old oak tree watching the sunset, Yates reflected on how much had changed in a single year. "I never imagined we'd come so far," he said, his arm around his wife's shoulders. "From nearly losing everything to gaining everything that truly matters." Zara leaned her head against him, her hand resting protectively over the slight swell of her belly where their first child grew. "It wasn't luck or fate," she replied. "It was courage, yours, mine, my parents'. And love," Yates added softly, "the kind worth fighting for." As darkness settled over the Montana territory, stars appeared one by one in the vast sky above them. The frontier remained a challenging place, but Yates and Zara had proven that even in the Wild West, hearts could find their true home in each other's arms.